We think tragedy strikes in an instant. One decision, one act, one man with a rifle on a rooftop. But the truth is, moments like this are written long before they ever happen. A person doesn't just wake up one day and decide to climb a rooftop with a rifle. The headlines will tell you who to blame, the commentators will argue why he did it, but there are deeper layers beneath the surface that nobody sees. Hidden fractures. What does his soul reveal, and were there others involved? This is the story I want to explore with you today. Now, for those of you who are new, my name is Sarah. In my work as a professional medical intuitive, I read the soul to uncover the root causes and higher meaning behind what we see in the physical world. I don't rely on cards. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not what I do. And I do not do this for clicks or views. My work is precise and intentional. When I read someone, I see the patterns, I see the fractures, I see the contracts a soul carries in this life. I've worked with people from all walks of life, helping them uncover what traditional approaches often can't see. A soul always reveals its story. And when you understand that story, events that once felt incomprehensible begin to make sense at an entirely different level. I do want to be clear that I am about to walk one of the most delicate tightropes publicly, holding the space for the devastation and grief for one family, the trauma and the pain for the other family, and the raw fear gripping through the community, all while pointing to the deeper soul truths beneath the surface. Accessing a person's energy is something that I can do very easily, but it must be done with permission and integrity. Because I don't have his consent, I won't be using names or personal details in this reading. My intention is to share only what serves your growth and our collective understanding while protecting what is private, sacred, and deeply personal. But even in moments like this, the individuals involved are still human and they are still worthy of this respect, while holding deep compassion for every family touched by this tragedy, even the individuals who were there in person and witnessed this tragedy. We honor their grief, we acknowledge their trauma, and at the same time, we must face the truth that acts of violence do not emerge from nowhere. They grow quietly from unresolved fear, unhealed resentment, disconnection, repressed anger, deep betrayal, and a desperate need to regain control. This does not excuse or justify the harm, but it does invite us, all of us, to confront our own shadows before they spiral out into destruction. Because only by facing what's hidden can you create space for healing, accountability, and ultimately prevent this from happening in the future. Now, before we begin, this is not a political video, not a conspiracy theory, or a debate of guilt or innocence. It's a soul reading, an exploration of energy, consciousness, and the unseen influences that shape human decision. I know enough of the news, but I purposely do not follow the news. I am not here to repeat the headlines. I am here to reveal what is beneath them. Rather than siding with who runs a country, I side with who runs the universe. It's a higher state of consciousness, one that reminds us that we're all part of the same creation. We've all been conditioned to see life through duality. Good versus bad, right versus wrong, us versus them, left versus right. That feels safe to you. That feels familiar to you. But here's the trap. Division is an illusion. It blinds you to what's actually happening beneath the surface. Because what drives people to destruction is rarely what you ever see on the outside. It's the fractures underneath. And once you begin to see that, you will never, ever look at a headline the same again. This man, who allegedly took a life and shattered families and communities, could easily be demonized. But I see it differently. When I connect to his soul, I do not see a monster. I see a young, very confused person bound to a heavy contract. This contract is also known as a correction that his soul came here to work through. We all have soul corrections, or we wouldn't be here. It is the work that each one of us came here to do. It's the specific patterns or lessons that our soul must face in order to grow. Now, it could be through fear, it could be through jealousy, through control, through anger, through rejection. It's your patterns on repeat, basically, that keep showing up in your life. And it's not a punishment. There is precise purpose in it. Now, one of his soul corrections is this constant wrestling with overwhelming fear. But even deeper, it was the unbearable panic of losing control to someone or something. Ironic, right? Now, his human self masked it well. Nobody could have spotted a killer. But inside, I see fractures that began long before and slowly grew louder over the years. And when fear and control dominate a soul, they will find a way out. I also see that he was consumed by self loathing, but it went deeper. I see layers and layers of shame and unworthiness that began back at a specific age, which I will not identify, but it has hollowed him out. Now, worthiness is not moral perfection, it is energetic capacity. Unworthiness is chronic among humans today. But in this soul specifically, the person became vulnerable. That's a key word to energetic interference, meaning that influences that felt stronger than his own will. This includes intrusive thoughts and impulsive behaviors, but due to the soul correction that he had, he was drawn to darker influences. And that is, people who vibrate at lower levels of consciousness because he lacked his own identity and meaning. I see clearly that he had been easily radicalized, which I saw before this was made known. When a person lacks worthiness at this depth, it weakens a layer of protection. We all have this protective layer around our soul, but focusing on never being enough, not being seen or understood, feeling undeserving, feeling unloved, I can actually see this protective layer around each soul, and it becomes weaker and weaker in that energy, which allows for more darker influences. And that has significant control over your thoughts, your actions, and your behaviors. As I look at the soul, I see how these outside influences fed the fractures within him, radicalizing his mind and convincing him that delusion was truth. It's a distorted perception of reality. But when a mind clings to a belief so tightly that no longer is allowed to see truth or reason, that is the trap. This delusion that he had became somewhat of a safe feeling, if that makes sense. And as I say this, it shows me he did not act alone. There was strategy, there was influence, and there was aiding and or coercion. But I'm not going to go further into that. I literally see that he's being convinced for the greater good that this needed to happen. I do feel that there is more evidence, and I really do hope that it will surface. But I also see that there is an issue around that as well. I'm sure you've known of somebody who has had a moment of vulnerability or moments, and somebody with an agenda comes along. We've all seen it happen, or we've been victims of that. And that's the case here that I feel. I also see betrayal as a core wound he carries, which is another soul correction for him. Now, he has experienced various levels of betrayal throughout his life in order to correct it. This betrayal wound specifically will continue to play out heavily, I see, throughout his life, however that long that is. Now, remember this because it's key. because this deep wound that he has is this correction that he must face. Even the fact that his family turned him in was a soul piercing betrayal. That was not random. It was designed that way. Now, we see it as the right thing to do and we see it as the noble thing to do, but he saw it through the lens of his soul correction, which was the highest form of betrayal. All right. So I also see that he was victimized in the past. I see a specific form of abuse, but I will not go into that for privacy reasons. It was betrayal again. It's the kind of betrayal that rearranges how you trust and how you learn to numb yourself in life. Now, we've all heard the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. Think of your cover as your appearance, what the outside world sees. Now, the inside, every chapter is your soul lesson or your soul correction that you came here to grow through. And every word in those chapters represents moments, a choice, a life experience that shapes that lesson. Now, the average book has over 30,000 words. That's thousands of moments that nobody can just see by glancing at the cover. You can't possibly know a person's story from their surface unless you read their soul. This person appeared ordinary to everyone, just another face in the crowd. And yet, what unfolded was not ordinary. The defense will likely focus on mental health or coercion or if any other evidence surfaces. But what I see goes far beyond the psychology of this. It is written into the chapters of his soul. He carried an underlying level of resentment towards the world and towards himself, which isolated him from real connections. He was living in the depths of isolation, another soul correction of his. Not just physical loneliness, but this is emotional separation because even when he was surrounded by others, he could not feel connection in the same way. Now, if your soul correction goes unhealed or unworked, they will likely intensify. Look at this level of isolation now that he's facing. Okay. Now, he was feeling also a loss of control in his life. And this is a heavy soul correction and truly what became his breaking point. I see him trapped in this loop of internalized pain and confusion. I also see video gaming reshaping the chemistry of his brain. I see influences around him that were fueling division that only intensified and distorted his fear and hatred. It's almost like it blurred his reality and really deepened the chaos that was already inside of him. He was in a state where he really wasn't truly aware of the magnitude and the consequences of his actions. And I feel like it didn't really hit him until he was behind bars. When souls carry this depth of a contract as he does, it often points to the fact that his soul is indeed a mirror of transformation to the collective, us. Our world is in deep need of healing and compassion. And every soul holds both shadow and light. And when we can feel the pain in these moments, yet put aside our judgment and hate, we can then and only then transform our soul correction. Because oftentimes our soul correction is the very thing that we're witnessing and judging, or we would not have a trigger to it. So when our internal narratives, which is the stories and the beliefs that play inside of us, are entangled by our external triggers, that most people, including his soul, have learned not to manage yet, the triggers, it will inevitably find its match in the outer world. Acts of violence can flow from this place if left unhealed. It doesn't excuse or justify what happened, and it does not erase the devastation, but it does reveal what is really driving him beneath the surface. Because right now, I feel that there is a small element of regret, but more in the sense that he is experiencing his worst outcome, not in the fact that he regrets what he did. It is actually more in the place of self-loathing going on, extreme self-loathing. And I would say that this self-loathing has been going on for a long time and has been almost a natural state of his. It stems from a soul correction deep, deep, deep into unworthiness. But if not healed, it will manifest stronger to get your attention, to be corrected. And look how it has manifested in his life behind bars. Okay? Anything that we don't heal or work through will manifest stronger and more powerful to get our fullest attention. We see this with our own health issues. If we put a Band-Aid on it or we ignore it, it will turn up the volume to get our attention. But that is a whole other topic for another day. I feel that he carries an intense feeling of being trapped in his life before the shooting. And what's striking is that even now, obviously, there are prison walls all around him. I'm talking that it's deeper and been there for over a good decade. But it is the feeling of not seeing a way out or through. Now, he could, if he could, he would have already taken his life. But I feel like he's being watched very closely. I literally feel like he's being watched around the clock. The death sentence does not frighten him at this point. What breaks him is this loss of control and this fear of betrayal again, knowing that his worst possible outcome is looming and there's nothing he can do to change that. That surrender of control is his greatest torment and also the very correction his soul came here to face. Do you see how that works? So, how do we hold this? We hold profound compassion for Charlie's family who lost a husband and who lost a father, regardless of your view on him. We hold compassion for this person's family who now live under the weight of his actions. Compassion does not erase responsibility, and responsibility does not erase compassion. Both must live side by side for there to be healing. This isn't just about one man with a rifle. It's about you as well. Acts like this force us to look at the fractures within our own soul, where we still feed division rather than unity, where we still cling to control, where fear has more of a voice than love. And here's the hard truth. Until we transform fear, until we transform unworthiness and shame and disconnection and control within ourselves, it will keep spilling outward into our relationships, into our families, into our work, into our communities. It doesn't have to be a rifle to create devastation. It does not have to be big betrayals to end relationships. It's those daily microfractures of judgment and correction that quietly disconnect at the heart. Every soul carries soul correction or unfinished work. Some are gentle, some are harsh, but all are meant to bring us back to the universal light. This person's soul correction is immense. Fear, control, betrayal, unworthiness, isolation. He did not overcome them. He collapsed into them. And yet, even that collapse carries a message for you. The lesson is this, that hate and violence are surface expressions of deeper soul fractures, such as fear that spins out when it is not corrected. And when we can learn from this, confronting your fears honestly, holding accountability without blame, and fostering healing in ourselves and in our communities before it spirals destructively, the balance is delicate. Love and compassion must coexist with truth and responsibility. I invite you to take a step back from judgment and to see the humanity behind all of the darkness. And also to reflect on how the unhealed fear can distort perceptions and break our connection to reality. And that can be at any level in any person. Every person watching this has unhealed fear within them. It's inevitable. because very few people in our world have evolved to a place where they have mastered their inner world. In social media, it's massive, where our right for free speech is used to tear people down. No, it's not a rifle, but the fractures underneath are the same. This opens space to transform fear inside of us before it turns outward. So instead of only asking, why did he do this? Ask yourself, what is this showing me? Where am I still ruled by fear or unworthiness or past betrayals? Where do I still grip onto the control instead of surrendering to the light? Because events like this don't happen just to us. They happen for us to wake us up. Now, this is my third video on the topic since Charlie Kirk's assassination. In the previous two, I read Charlie Kirk's soul and shared the truths that he revealed to me after his passing. So if you haven't seen that yet, I encourage you to go over there and watch that next, and you'll find the link right down below. I only recently began sharing my work here on YouTube after a lot of encouragement from people who have experienced my work firsthand. And the response has been incredible. And it tells me that people like you are craving truth at this level. So if you want me to keep sharing more videos like this and creating more videos like this, make sure that you like and subscribe. And tell me, please, what you would like to hear next so we can continue to go into the soul and uncover the hidden wisdom in every moment, even the hardest ones.